Up until this point, hopefully you are comfortable with all the different prompt elements, how to design prompts, what are the rules of prompt engineering, right? And speaking of rules of prompt engineering, আমাদের last videoতে we ended our discussion on these particular rules of prompt engineering এবং আমি খুব একটা details-এ যাইনি. So for the next videos we'll focus on these 2 points, okay? So before that, let us roll back to what we learned in part 1 of the course about GPT and large language models, okay? So if you remember, আমরা শিখেছিলাম what the training process is. Basically আমরা আমাদের large language model কে we provide it with a bunch of input and output, okay? And from the given input and output sequence, আমাদের model it basically figures out the relation, right? How to get to the output given my input, right? So আমাদের model in the training phase, all it does is from the given input and output pairs, it basically figures out the relation between the given input and output. It figures out the pattern, right? এবং যখন আমাদের model it's in the testing phase, it's in production, our model it basically uses the same pattern it learned during the training phase, and আমাদের model based on any given input, it would basically apply the pattern on that input to figure out what the output will be, right? And this particular process of training আমরা বলেছিলাম we know it as supervised learning, right? যেখানে আমরা আমাদের মডেলকে স্পেসিফিক্যালি দেখিয়ে দেই if this is my input then this will be the corresponding output, right? And the model based on the input and output figures out the pattern which it uses during the testing phase, right? এবং আমরা এটাও বলেছিলাম for large amount of text data using supervised learning is quite difficult, right? Especially যেখানে models like GPT-3 it's trained on terabytes of data, providing the model with all possible input and output sequence is quite difficult and it's not realistic, right? So instead যেটা আমরা করে থাকি we take the help of unsupervised learning, যেখানে we provide the model with enormous amounts of data, enormous amounts of input sequence, and we let the model figure out the pattern itself, right? Which is very cost effective in the long run. যখন we were learning about GPT, we also learned about these 3 terms, okay? Let's have a quick recap, okay? So if these are my NLP tasks, হতে পারে text summarization, classification, translation, instruction following, sentiment analysis or anything else, আমরা বলেছিলাম during unsupervised pre-training phase, যেখানে we train models like GPT-3 on huge amounts of text data, natural language data collected from sources like Common Crawl, web text, books data, Wikipedia, which totals to about 45 terabyte of text data, which results in an astounding 175 billion parameters, right? And based on these huge amounts of text, our model it becomes fairly strong given any NLP task, be it summarization, classification or anything else. এবং এই unsupervised pre-training is immediately followed by supervised fine-tuning, যেখানে we train our model in a supervised manner, যেখানে আমরা আমাদের মডেলকে for a particular downstream task আমরা আমাদের মডেলকে দেখিয়ে দেই, well, if this is my input, then this should be my output. And what's the result? Our model, it becomes exceptionally strong at that downstream task, right? So after unsupervised pre-training, jodi amader model it is a jack of all trades and master of none, then after supervised fine tuning amader model it becomes not only jack of all trades, but it gains expertise, it becomes master on a particular NLP task. Amader ChatGPT, which is based on GPT 3.5, it is fine tuned on instruction following, which is also known as question answering or imitating human dialogue. Okay, ebong ChatGPT, it takes the process one step further by introducing reinforcement learning with human feedback. যেখানে I teach my model, I correct my model with the help of feedback. মডেলকে আমি দেখিয়ে দেই, well, the output you generated, it's not correct, this should be the output. অথবা if the model generated multiple outputs, তাকে আমি দেখিয়ে দেই, well, among all your outputs, this one is the best. I rank the output with the help of my feedback. Okay, and finally we also learned the word generative, okay, or generative pre-training, jar ortho chilo, although my model it's exceptionally good at a specific downstream task, it is still fairly good at any given NLP task. Jodi apni notice koren, models like say ChatGPT, it's very good at any NLP task, right? Hote pare summarization ba classification ba translation, it can do almost any task with high accuracy, right? Although it was actually fine tuned on instruction following. ChatGPT কে স্পেসিফিক্যালি ফাইন টিউন করা হয়েছে, তাকে এক্সপ্লিসিট এক্সাম্পল স্যাম্পল দেওয়া হয়েছে ইন কেস অফ ইনস্ট্রাকশন ফলোয়িং বা কোয়েশ্চেন অ্যান্সারিং বা ইমিটেটিং হিউম্যান ডায়ালগ, রাইট? বাট রিগার্ডলেস অফ দ্যাট ইটস স্টিল গুড অ্যাট এনি গিভেন NLP task, যদিও ডিউরিং আনসুপারভাইজড প্রি-ট্রেনিং we did not provide the model with explicit examples, right? It can still generalize its performance for any task, right? Ebong a particular process amra dekhechilam, it's referred to as zero shot learning, jekhane despite of giving my model zero examples on any given natural language task, আমাদের model it can still bring out the best of performance. So OpenAI has been in the game of developing large language models since 2018, যেখানে OpenAI released the first generation of GPT, which was basically GPT-1, and it has been releasing different versions of GPT to very recent GPT-4 this year, right? Our focus for this course will be on GPT-3 and 3.5, which are the third generation of large language models developed by OpenAI with the single goal of generating human-like natural language. Okay, the base model of GPT-3, যে মডেলটি রিলিজ হয়েছিল in the year 2020, the base model, the GPT-3 initial model is called Da Vinci. Okay, and this exact model, a particular model, Da Vinci, this is the same model that was trained using unsupervised pre-training on about 45 terabytes of data, which resulted in an astounding 175 billion parameters. এবং আমরা দেখেছি after this pre-training phase, our model, it becomes fairly strong at any given NLP task, right? And then it was fine tuned to be human like. এই প্রসেসটাকে অনেক সময় আমরা বলে থাকি instruction tuning, okay? It has been evolving to become smarter at instruction following, question answering, at imitating human dialogue. এবং a prime example would be our very own ChatGPT. And from the GPT-3 base model Da Vinci all the way to the latest ChatGPT, in between আরো অনেক মডেল কিন্তু রিলিজ করা হয়েছে, which we will see very shortly. Okay, আমাদের মনে প্রশ্ন জাগে, well, so many models, so which one to pick, right? And what are the abilities or performance of each of these models, right? So for example, how is Da Vinci different from ChatGPT? আমরা বলেছি Da Vinci, the base model, is pre-trained on large and enormous corpus of text data, and it becomes generative where, without providing any explicit examples during training, it still is fairly good at any task involving natural language. And then over a course of few months to few years, we fine tune, we instruction tune the model to imitate human like dialogue and behavior, right? So proshno jage, how is ChatGPT smarter than Da Vinci, right? What is the performance difference of these models? Okay, so when it comes to the ability or performance of a particular large language model, apni as an end user, what do you care about? You care about how good the model is at completing my instructions, my prompt, okay? Apni etao jante chan, how good is it at imitating human behavior? চিন্তা করে দেখুন, আপনি যখন when you're interacting with ChatGPT আপনাকে, it excites you, right? You are excited, you are thrilled to interact with ChatGPT. And why is that? এর কারণ হলো ChatGPT, it feels আমি একজন মানুষের সাথে conversation করছি, right? So it's important for a model to be human like. Okay, আপনি এটাও জানতে চান how fast the model is at providing or generating a response, okay? এবং is it even cost effective? Okay, আপনি আরও জানতে চান as an end user, what can you do to improve performance? Okay, so we learned about all these training techniques, right? কিন্তু এই particular techniques, pre-training, fine-tuning, kingba RLHF, what's the problem? The problem is I, as an end user, I have no control over these training phases, right? All the big corporations, যেমন OpenAI, Google, kingba Meta AI, Facebook, they do the training process. They train the model with all those data, right? Ami as an end user, I have no control. But Ami as an end user, I have control over one thing. Sheta ki hote pare? Well, prompt engineering, right? So to understand the abilities or performance of an OpenAI model and how we can as an end user take advantage of that ability, othoba as an end user can I influence the performance of a model, sheta jante hole we have to know a few things. The first one being a model's zero shot ability, which is more focused on the training phase, in particular the fine tuning phase. Okay, এবং আমাদের জানতে হবে another ability of a model which is called few shot, যেখানে we as an end user we have some influence on the performance of the model via prompt engineering. Okay, so চলুন দেখে নেওয়া যাক at first the zero shot ability of a model, okay, which is more dependent on the training phase and less dependent on prompt engineering. So যেমনটা আমরা কিছুক্ষণ আগে দেখে এসেছি, the zero shot ability of a large language model is nothing but the model's ability of completing any given NLP task without guiding the model with explicit examples, right? So basically zero examples. Okay, so remember একটা বিষয় আপনার লক্ষ্য রাখতে হবে when understanding zero shot ability, or কিছুক্ষণ পরে আমরা দেখব the few shot ability, try to understand these two concepts from the perspective of prompt engineering. Okay, why? Because prompt engineering is the only way you can influence the performance of a particular model. Okay, so consider this particular prompt. Okay, আমি আমার লার্জ ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ মডেলকে, আমার জিপিটি মডেলকে আমি ইনস্ট্রাক্ট করছি, well, rewrite the given informal sentence in a formal style, এবং আমাদের input data, the informal sentence is basically I gotta say this new phone's camera is sick. Okay, so we want our model to transform this particular sentence to its corresponding formal version, right? এবং যদি আপনি নোটিস করেন while designing this particular prompt আমরা কিন্তু আমাদের মডেলকে কোনো এক্সাম্পল দেখিয়ে দিইনি, right? And by example I mean আমরা আমাদের মডেলকে explicitly দেখিয়ে দিইনি যে if this is my sample informal sentence then this should be the corresponding sample formal sentence. Okay, মূল কথা হলো without giving explicit examples in the prompt our model will still perform very well at the given instruction. It is because in case of zero shot ability আমাদের model, if it has the zero shot ability, then our model, it is actually more dependent on fine tuning, right? যেহেতু আমাদের prompte we did not have to mention explicit examples of the given task, it basically means আমাদের model it's already trained or fine tuned or instruction tuned on this particular task. That's why we had to give zero examples. We did not have to show any demonstration to our model, but it will still be able to bring out the best of responses, and it is solely because of fine tuning the model. And the more fine tuned or instruction tuned the model is, the more human like the model will become. Example will be ChatGPT. যখন you're interacting with ChatGPT, আপনি কি ChatGPT কে do you provide, when you are prompting, do you provide ChatGPT with examples? You do not, right? You simply instruct ChatGPT and it responds to you as if it was a human, right? So models like ChatGPT, if a model has zero shot ability, it means the model becomes less dependent on prompt examples, which means it's more comfortable on end user, right? কারণ যেমনটা বললাম, models like ChatGPT, you don't have to explicitly show it what it should do, right? You don't give it some example scenarios. Showing explicit examples for every possible instruction is very tedious, right? So আপনি as an end user আপনার জন্য if a model is if a model has zero shot ability, then you are in good hands, right? But it also means you have a bit less scope of control, right? Because the model, it's already fine-tuned on a particular set of data. You don't have much to do with your prompt, right? So then there is few shot ability, and it's exactly the opposite of zero shot ability. যেখানে the model, it needs explicit examples to understand instruction, right? So few shot, few examples, okay? And by example, what do I mean is this, okay? So যেমনটা জিরো শট অ্যাবিলিটিতে আমরা দেখে এসেছি, I'm trying to do the same task but with a different model. In this case, আমাদের model, it does not have the zero shot ability, but this time our model, it has few shot ability, which basically means যখন আমরা prompt করব as an end user, we have to provide explicit examples on how our model should perform, okay? So for a particular instruction, যেমন in this case we are trying to convert an informal sentence to its corresponding formal version, আমাদের মডেলকে স্পেসিফিক্যালি দেখিয়ে দিতে হবে with some example scenarios যে if this is my informal sentence, then you should provide me with output formal sentences similar to the ones I showed you, okay? So before I ask my model to provide me the formal version of I gotta say this phone's camera is sick, আমি তাকে explicitly দেখিয়ে দিচ্ছি, well, if the informal sentence is hey what's up, then the formal should be like greetings, I regret blah blah blah. Similarly, in the second example, if I say the movie was pretty cool, the formal should be like the film was rather impressive and blah blah blah, right? So you should follow this particular way of transformation, right? So unlike the zero shot ability, if our model, it has few shot ability, then the prompt examples that you provide, it has an impact on its performance, okay? So আমরা দেখেছিলাম in case of zero shot ability, we did not have much to do with prompt examples. Rather আমরা দেখেছিলাম আমাদের model, it was already fine tuned during the training phase on following such instructions, right? But in this case, in few shot ability, we have to provide prompt examples because it's not very fine-tuned like zero shot ability. So it is a bit tedious on the user end, right? So for a particular set of instructions, আপনি as a user, আপনাকে কিন্তু আপনার মডেলকে স্পেসিফিক্যালি দেখিয়ে দিতে হবে with example scenarios on how it should behave, how it should generate the output, okay, which you did not have to do in case of zero shot ability. আমরা এটাও দেখেছিলাম in case of zero shot ability, you had less scope of control, but in this case, it's quite obvious that as an end user, you actually have a bit more scope of control, right? Because few shot ability is dependent on prompt examples. So a quick summary, the zero shot ability is basically the ability of a model to understand instructions without examples, right? Zero, demonstration. অপরদিকে few shot ability is the ability of a model to understand instructions but with explicit examples, right? You have to provide few demonstrations. You have to provide some additional context. So few shot ability is often referred to as in context learning, okay? আমরা এটাও দেখেছি the result of instruction tuning a model is it becomes more aligned with humans, right? It becomes more human like. We are fine tuning our model during the training phase on instruction following task, question answering task, or imitating human language, human dialogue. Okay, এবং আমাদের এটাও মনে রাখতে হবে the more instruction tuned a model is, the more it gains zero shot ability. Basically, after the pre-training phase, if we instruction tune our model, it starts to behave like humans. It starts to generate human-like language, right? And it gains zero shot ability. It becomes generative, right? Which means যখন as an end user আমরা prompt design করছি, we do not have to show our model explicit scenarios. আমার মডেলকে আমার explicitly দেখিয়ে দিতে হচ্ছে না on how it should behave, how it should provide me with what I want, right? সাথে আমাদের এটাও মনে রাখতে হবে if our model it's more fine tuned, it's more instruction tuned to behave like human, although it gains more zero shot ability, it starts to lose in context learning ability. It starts to lose few shot ability, right? Which basically means our model it becomes less and less dependent on prompt itself, right? আমরা দেখেছিলাম in case of few shot learning আমাদের মডেলকে we have to guide it with explicit examples, but since আমাদের model it's very fine tuned to be like human, it starts to gain zero shot ability, compromising in context learning ability. A particular situation OpenAI mentions it as alignment tax, okay? যার অর্থ হলো to increase the model's zero shot ability, to make the model more aligned to human behavior, we have to trade off the model's in context learning ability. Okay,